Welcome to the deep dive. You probably locked your front door today without a second thought.
Yeah, most of us do. You
Yeah.
step outside, pull the door shut, turn the key, and walk away.
Right. You hear that click and you just assume, you assume that physical barrier is absolute.
Exactly. But the reality of that security is it's significantly more complex than just a simple mechanical click.
Which is exactly what we're getting into today,
Yeah.
because we are focusing on a really specific scenario, protecting your home while you're on vacation.
It's such a critical time. I mean, common burglary patterns during vacation seasons, especially in places like Los Angeles, they show a huge spike in break-ins when houses look empty.
Yeah, the data is wild. So our mission today is to give you a complete 360-degree understanding of what's actually keeping your door shut before you leave town. We're pulling from a massive stack of sources today.
We've got highly technical locksmithing training manuals, a police guide to lockpicking.
Which is fascinating, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. Plus, we're looking at IB World market reports, smart lock tech reviews, official FTC warnings, and even a viral Reddit thread about a total holiday lockout nightmare.
Right, and we're going to cover lock upgrades, reinforcing entry points, and smart locks. Plus, we are proudly sponsored today by West Point Locksmith. You can reach them at 310-295-4040.
They're a really great local resource.
They are fast, reliable, professional locksmiths serving all of Los Angeles. They have amazing 5-star reviews. From emergency lockouts to rekeying, smart locks, and car key replacements, they're available 24/7. So if you're prepping for a trip, they keep your home, business, and vehicle secure.
Having a trusted pro like that is so important, especially when you start understanding how these physical locks actually work.
Yeah, let's start there. Let's look at the physical hardware on your door right now. We all kind of know the basic pin tumbler mechanism, right?
Right, the standard key in the door, you insert it, the jagged cuts push a series of pins up to what's called a shear line, and the cylinder rotates.
But the training manuals give this really fascinating insight. Lockpicking isn't about defeating the fundamental design of the lock at all.
No, not at all. It's about exploiting microscopic manufacturing tolerances.
Right, because if a factory could machine a perfect lock, like down to the micrometer,
Then picking, as we know it, just wouldn't exist. It wouldn't be possible.
but mass production means you have to have sliding allowances.
Exactly. The inner cylinder, the plug, it needs a tiny gap between it and the outer shell just to overcome friction. Otherwise, it wouldn't rotate freely when you turn the key.
And on top of that, the holes drilled for the pins, they're never perfectly aligned.
Right, they might be off by just a microscopic fraction of a millimeter. And pickers use that necessary gap to their advantage.
They use a tension wrench, right? They insert it into the keyway and apply a really slight turning force, or torque.
Yeah, and because the pin chambers aren't perfectly aligned, that rotational force causes one specific pin stack, whichever one happens to be the most misaligned, to bind against the side of its chamber before the others.
It essentially gets stuck.
Exactly, and that is the core principle of single pin picking. The picker methodically finds that one binding pin and lifts it to the shear line.
And once it clears, the cylinder rotates another tiny fraction of a millimeter until the next pin binds.
Right, they set them one by one, or they use a technique called raking, where they basically scrub multiple pins simultaneously while applying tension, hoping to bounce them to the shear line.
But both methods rely entirely on the fact that these mass-produced metal parts have unavoidable imperfections.
Which brings us to the Hollywood myth.
Oh man, the Police Guide to Lockpicking explicitly calls this out. We've all seen the movies where the spy walks up to a fortified door.
Sticks a paperclip in, jiggles it with one hand, and 3 seconds later they're in.
It gives the public such a skewed perception of security.
It really does. The guide points out that no physical lock is truly an impenetrable barrier. Their actual function is simply to force an intruder to expend time and make noise.
Time and noise, those are the two critical metrics of physical security.
Because if a burglar has to stand at your front door for 10 minutes, fumbling with tools, making scratching sounds, the statistical likelihood of them getting caught, or just giving up and moving to an easier target, it skyrockets.
The harder the lock is to manipulate, the more time and noise it takes to defeat it. And manufacturers are constantly fighting back.
Right, using security pins.
Instead of straight metal cylinders for the top pins, they use shapes, like spools or mushrooms or pins with serrated ridges.
And those drastically alter the mechanical feedback loop for the log picker.
How so?
Well, when a picker tries to lift a mushroom pin while applying tension, The lip of the mushroom head catches on the edge of the shear line.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and it actually causes the cylinder to rotate a few degrees. It gives the picker what's known as a false set.
So the picker feels that rotation, hears a click, and assumes they've successfully set the pin.
Exactly, but they're actually just trapped on the lip of that mushroom head.
And to get out of it, they have to release the tension.
Right. But releasing that tension usually causes all the other standard pins they've already carefully picked to instantly drop back down.
Forcing them to start the entire process all over again.
It's a brilliant mechanical trick to exponentially increase the time required.
Which is fascinating, but let's bring this back to practical home ownership, especially if you're getting ready to go on vacation.
Right, the real-world application.
Because the most common scenario isn't a spy picking your lock, it's that you lost your keys while traveling, or maybe you gave a spare to a contractor or a dog walker, and now you need to revoke access.
And the knee-jerk reaction for a lot of people is just to run to the hardware store and buy entirely new lock sets for every door.
Which this old house pricing data shows is usually a massive, unnecessary expense.
Oh, absolutely. Depending on the brand, replacing locks can run anywhere from $50 to $300 per door.
And that's just the hardware, not even factoring in labor if you hire someone.
If you're outfitting a front door, a back patio, and a garage entry, you're quickly looking at thousands of dollars.
But there is a much better way. If your existing hardware is solid, if it's not degraded, the economically sound move is rekeying.
Rekeying is fantastic. A locksmith simply removes the cylinder from your existing lock, throws out the old pins, and drops in a brand new combination of pins that match a newly issued key.
And the result is that the old key, the one you lost on the beach, will still physically slide into the keyway.
Right, it slides in, but because the jagged cuts no longer match the heights of the new pins, it won't align them to the shear line.
The cylinder won't turn. You've completely neutralized that lost key.
And you do it for a fraction of the cost. A standard service fee for a locksmith to come out is typically $70 to $160, plus maybe $30 to $50 per cylinder.
That's where a local service like our sponsor, West Point Locksmith, is perfect. Again, their number is 310-295-4004. If you're in Los Angeles and handed out spare keys before your trip, have them come out and rekey the doors.
It preserves your investment in quality hardware and gives you the exact same security as a brand new lock. You really only need to pursue a full replacement if the hardware is cheap, builder-grade stuff, if it's damaged.
Or if you're making the leap to electronic access control.
Right, the smart lock revolution.
Which is happening at an incredible pace. The IAB's World Report shows a staggering shift. 81% of locksmiths report that electronic access control is fundamentally altering their business.
It's a monumental pivot. For thousands of years, this trade relied almost exclusively on manipulating tiny brass pins. Now, consumer demand for convenience, remote access, and audit trails, knowing exactly who opened the door and when, is overwhelming the traditional market.
We looked at the smart home solver reviews to see where the consumer tech actually is right now, and the capabilities are just impressive.
What stood out to you?
The Schlagen Code Plus is a major standout. It integrates with Apple HomeKey. You can literally just tap your iPhone or Apple Watch to the deadbolt to unlock it.
Oh, that's incredibly convenient, especially if you're out for a run and don't want to carry keys.
Exactly. Then there's the Lockly Secure Pro. This one addresses a very specific vulnerability with digital keypads.
Smudge attacks.
Yes. Over time, the natural oils from your fingers leave a visible smudge pattern on the numbers you use for your passcode.
So anyone inspecting the lock can guess your code, or just shoulder surf while you type it in.
Right. But Lockly solves this with a feature they call the Pin Jenny. The lock constantly randomizes the location of the numbers on the screen every time it wakes up.
Oh, so you input the same numeric sequence, but you're physically touching different parts of the screen every time.
Mathematically neutralizing smudge attacks, it's brilliant.
For biometrics, the reviews highlighted the Aquara U100 as a great budget-friendly option. The reviewer noted the fingerprint sensor works really well, even if your hands are wet or sweaty.
Which has historically been a big failure point for exterior doors. And if you hate that bulky robotic look of early smart locks, the Yale Assure 2 offers a really compact, refined design that operates quietly.
But the real value here is connecting these devices to the broader ecosystem of the home. There's a transcript from a Locksmith podcast featuring Wayne Winton that perfectly illustrates this.
Oh, the Aspen, Colorado example.
Yes. He uses a hypothetical scenario of a homeowner away on a 2-week vacation. During that time, Their smart home sensors detect a catastrophic failure in the heating system.
The temperature starts plummeting, threatening to freeze and burst the pipes, which would cause tens of thousands in water damage.
With a traditional lock, getting someone in there from across the country is a logistical nightmare. You're relying on neighbors or hidden spare keys.
But with an integrated smart system, you get the temperature alert on your phone. You dispatch an emergency plumber.
When the plumber arrives, you verify their identity via a smart doorbell camera and remotely unlock the door from a beach thousands of miles away.
You can even generate a temporary, single-use access code that automatically expires the moment they leave.
It's a complete paradigm shift. You're managing dynamic environmental access to the entire property.
Which is amazing for visitation prep, just like reinforcing your doors, windows, and garage entry points before you leave.
Oh, definitely. And setting up lighting timers is visible deterrents. A smart home system can randomize your light so it actually looks like someone is moving room to room.
It's all about layers of security. But, as with all things, there is a very dark side to the locksmithing industry that you need to be aware of.
The lockout scams.
Yeah. We pulled a viral Reddit thread that outlines a distressingly common, highly predatory scenario. A person is at a crowded beach on the 4th of July, loses their keys, and gets locked out of their car and their apartment.
And because it's a holiday, emergency maintenance is unavailable. They're stranded and panicked.
That specific combination of panic and desperation is exactly what predatory operations exploit.
According to warnings from the Federal Trade Commission, these aren't just isolated incidents of price gouging. These are highly organized nationwide networks operating on sophisticated lead conversion funnels.
So the desperate person searches your phone for 247 emergency locksmith near me and clicks the top sponsored ad, assuming it's a local mom-and-pop shop.
But the scammers use SEO to route that call to a massive overseas call center. The dispatcher is trained to be super reassuring and quotes an artificially low price, usually like a flat $50 service fee.
Just to secure the commitment.
Exactly. Once you agree, the next step in the funnel engages. They dispatch an unlicensed, untrained subcontractor in your area.
And they always show up in an unmarked personal vehicle.
Right. Maybe a generic magnetic locksmith sign on the side, but no official uniform or ID.
The trap springs shut when you ask to confirm that $50 quote. The contractor refuses to provide a written estimate, claiming it was just a dispatch fee and that labor and parts are entirely separate.
And here's the definitive red flag. The moment you must walk away. The demand for destructive entry.
Because a real professional like the guys at West Point Locksmith, they have the tools and expertise to manipulate the sheer line of a standard lock non-destructively.
All right, it might take a few minutes if there are security pins that they can pick it. The scammer will immediately claim your lock is a high security model that can't be picked and insist the only option is to drill and destroy the cylinder.
Once the lock is destroyed, your home is totally unsecured and the scammer has total leverage. In that Reddit story, the scammer forced the victim to buy a replacement deadbolt on the spot for $220.
And locksmiths who reviewed the photos identified that replacement lock. It was an LSDA brand deadbolt, a budget, low-grade lock with a wholesale cost of roughly $12.
A $220 retail markup on a $12 piece of hardware, plus exorbitant labor fees.
The FTC outlines clear guidelines for protecting yourself. First, demand to see official identification and verify their state license if your state requires one.
If an unmarked sedan pulls up and they refuse to show credentials, send them away immediately.
Second, require a firm written estimate before any tools touch your door. If they won't put it in writing, terminate the interaction.
And finally, always pay with a credit card.
Yes. Scammers aggressively demand cash, debit, or cash apps like Zelle, because those are immediate and impossible to reverse.
A credit card lets you dispute the charge later if you realize you've been subjected to fraud or extortion.
But the ultimate proactive measure, especially before a vacation, is to handle this before an emergency ever occurs.
Exactly. Research and vet a reputable local brick-and-mortar locksmith on a random Tuesday afternoon.
Verify their reviews, save their number in your phone.
Which is why we've mentioned our sponsor, West Point Locksmith, multiple times today. They have those 5-star reviews across Los Angeles. Save their number, 310-295-4040. They do emergency lockouts, rekeying, smart locks, everything. Call them for a security check before you travel.
It's so much better to have a trusted professional already in your contacts.
We've covered a massive amount of ground today on protecting your home. We looked at the mechanical realities of manufacturing tolerances, the economic efficiency of rekeying, the integration of smart home ecosystems, and the anatomy of predatory lockout scams.
You definitely walk away with a fundamentally different understanding of the systems securing your property.
Absolutely.
But it does lead to a critical realization about the future of home security. For centuries, physical security meant manipulating tiny brass pins and springs to defend against an attacker with lockpicks.
We worried about physical attacks on physical hardware.
Right. But as we integrate our front doors into the Internet of Things, relying heavily on Wi-Fi protocols, biometric data, and cloud-based access codes, the primary attack vector fundamentally changes.
That makes total sense.
The burglar of tomorrow is less likely to be carrying a set of metal lockpicks in their pocket and far more likely to be carrying a laptop. It really makes you wonder, as we upgrade our convenience, are we simply trading our historical physical vulnerability for modern digital exposure?